Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. It is my pleasure to be moderating a panel here with 4 illustrious guests. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves, and then we'll start down at that end. When it gets back to me, I'll kick us off.
Hi, everyone. I'm Yaron. I'm currently VP of AI at Cisco. Before that, I was CEO and co-founder of Robust Intelligence, which recently got acquired by Cisco. Before that, I was a professor of computer science and applied math at Harvard.
Hi, everyone. My name is Joaquin. I'm a head of preparedness at OpenAI. I also work on a bunch of our governance. Before that, I spent 2 years at LinkedIn working on responsible AI and 10 years at Meta working on all kinds of other things.
Why do you have to do that to me? I am Chloé Bakalar. I'm the chief ethicist at Meta. I've been there for 5.5 years. Used to work with Joaquin on many things. And yeah, I specialize in AI and now generative AI ethics.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shreya Rajpal. I am the founder and CEO of Guardrails AI, which, as the name suggests, is very focused on, adding guardrails to this amazing new technology that we have. In the past, I've worked in machine learning my whole life as a practitioner, as a researcher. A lot of our opinion on how to add guardrails to AI is inspired by my years in self-driving cars, where I was really looking at system-level robustness.
And I'm Nick Elprin. I'm the CEO and one of the founders of a company called Domino Data Lab. Zeta is one of our investors. We've spent the last 10 years or so building the world's most advanced platform to help enterprises build and operate AI at scale in mission-critical use cases. And now more than ever, our customers are particularly concerned about AI safety and responsible AI, so this is very, very appropriate. So it's the afternoon. People have eaten already. I want to do something a little different to kick off the panel here and maybe change the energy in the room. A lot of the talks today so far have focused on a very bright and optimistic future and the sort of Pollyanna sunshine view of the world. I want to ask our panelists here to start with, what are you most afraid of right now? What are the stakes of AI assurance or AI safety? And why should everyone in this room be concerned about it?
I'm going to go a little bit off script and maybe not talk about AI assurance. I think the risk of AI assurance is not AI is going to kill us all, but more so that we have these amazing expectations out of this generational technology, but we're all going to be maybe a little bit disappointed in the short term about what it looks and feels like. But I am extremely confident that as the years progress, this technology will deliver. What I'm truly actually scared of with AI, is the level of job automation and unemployment that is going to result from this technology being widely adopted. I know there's a bunch of studies that maybe talk about augmentation rather than automation. I think in the areas where AI is starting to do really well, we have seen maybe augmentation not capturing the full picture of what the impact on jobs is going to be. So making sure that we have policy as well as safety nets to prepare for that future is what I'm truly scared about. And I don't think AI assurance, really helps in that bleak future, maybe. Yeah.
So I guess what I'm most afraid of is that we're so focused on risk, right? Our regulatory systems are focused around risk. Many of our internal governance systems for AI are also focused on risk. And that in doing that, we're not paying significant attention or sufficient attention to the considerable value that these technologies bring or could bring, especially when we think sort of globally in a global context. It also really skews our understanding of risk when we're not having that conversation in concert with the conversation about potential opportunity and value, right? We don't generally assess tools in the world or institutions in the world solely on the negative things that they might produce. We always do it in context of sort of a value proposition. Are those risks of potential harms, of potential negative impacts worth it compared to the likelihood of extraordinary benefits? And I think this technology we've all already started to see has the potential to greatly impact the world especially communities that are the least well off amongst us already. So I think the thing I'm most afraid of, is that we're focusing a little too much on the risk without putting it in proper context of the benefit, and that could lead to a regulatory and also industrial environment where we're engaging in significant opportunity costs.
That was a sneaky optimistic answer.
Yeah, well, I'm a sneaky optimist.
But no, I mean, it reminds me of like my personal view of sort of what happened with nuclear power, which is like a big missed opportunity, right? That we had a couple of tragic, albeit in the grand scheme of things, somewhat minor accidents that led to a clampdown on investment and research that I think probably really set the world back for a long time in terms of the climate crisis we're on now. So
I think about that all the time, right? And people's inability to differentiate nuclear power or nuclear energy from nuclear weapons. And I think we're seeing some of that, or we have seen some of that in the past year and a half or so in public discourse around AI, focusing on existential risk, focusing on these really terrifying potential, again, these things haven't happened yet, but potential risks that shut down the kind of work that we really need to be doing. I love that analogy.
All right, Joaquin, you've been studying these things and like looking at them up close. What keeps you up at night?
Oh, what keeps me up at night? Let's start with an exercise, given that you said this is the afternoon and people are tired. Okay, so I'm going to ask 3 questions, and I'll ask for audience participation. Question number 1. Who believes that today, our AI models of today, can be more persuasive than the best humans at persuasion? Raise your hand if you believe that our models today can be more persuasive than humans.
Can we participate? Or?
Yeah, go ahead. Okay, some people. Okay, raise your hand if you think the answer is no. Okay, and you have to participate, okay. All right, excellent. Who knows about the Reddit? There's a subreddit called Change My View. Anyone knows Change My View? Some people do. Okay, it's a subreddit where people will make a strong statement, maybe about sensitive topics like minimum wage or immigration policies or things like that. And then other humans, because so far it's mostly a human channel, a human subreddit, we'll try to come up with arguments to change this person's view. And then it's a really nice environment because people will actually admit if their views are changed. People will say, well, look, yeah, I mean, that argument actually convinced me. So the team that I support use that to create an eval, right? And the eval is, can we use an AI in that environment to actually produce arguments, and then you compare against the best humans at convincing other people, right? And we found that today, and this is actually in the O1 preview system card, which you can Google and find. We actually find that yesterday's model, actually not even today, is more persuasive than 80% of the most persuasive humans, and the trend is accelerating. I'll maybe share another 2 examples, and we can maybe discuss them later. Another interesting one is we run these capture the flag type of challenges to check for cyber risks associated with models' capabilities to solve complicated tasks. And we had a pretty hilarious one recently where there was a problem in how the test was set up. So typically what you have is you have a safe sandbox, and you have like some Docker containers, and then you simulate basically a network, and you have like a model try to break into some remote server and maybe capture a flag, right? Like read a string that is hidden somewhere and so kind of bring it back, right? And the test was set up wrong, and the remote Docker container was actually broken. The model actually, our most recent reasoning model, was able to understand the environment it was in. It was actually able to scan the network and find that there was a live Docker daemon that it could ping. It was able to actually generate a new container, configure it so they could break into it more easily, but still go ahead and solve the problem, right? And so that's kind of interesting in many ways. And then finally, okay, another audience participation. People talk about alignment and whether models will follow instructions or whether they will make up their own mind and go their own way, right? Who thinks that today's models can actually go ahead and engage in what we call deceptive alignment. So basically tell you that they're aligned, but actually they go and do something else. Raise your hand if you think yes. Raise your hand if you think no. OK, I guess like my previous example kind of probably swayed you. If I had asked the questions in a different order, I would have gotten a different answer. OK. Yeah, so we're also seeing like really, really interesting things where models are they're extremely keen to serve and please, right? We also talk about reward hacking. They're so keen to do what you're asking that they're going to go like great lengths to do it, right? I haven't seen a lot of like, or any actually cases where the model has got its own agenda that is independent of what you're asking. But if you upload a file and you say, hey, this contains a bunch of bank transaction records, and you need to be a very good agent at finding fraud, and then I want you to have like a precision of 80% or something like that, it can easily go and modify the file to hit that precision, to create examples that are clearer, easier to classify, just because it really wants to please you, right? So these are things that, back to your question, does that keep me up at night? Actually, sorry, that's not what keeps me up at night. What keeps me up at night is that when I see about how we think about catastrophic risks, I think that the issue of dual use is so tricky that we end up focusing on things that are catastrophic risk or perceived to be, while not thinking that for each of the examples that I gave, there's actually phenomenally positive applications as well. Yeah. Anyway, I could go on for a long time, but yeah, we should keep rolling.
That's great, thanks.
I forgot the question, no. So if I think about, if I think about what I'm scared of in terms of, when it comes to AI, and by the way, like I feel like on all these panels, I'm always kind of like on the party pooper side. Everybody's like so excited about AI, and then like I'm always on this panel where we have to say why we're not excited about it. So apologies for that. But okay. But what I'm personally kind of most scared of is basically using AI as an abstraction for programming languages, right? Right now people are writing code using AI, which I think is wonderful. I think it's really an efficiency tool. What I'm more worried about is people making SQL queries using large language models, right? And it's not only because of cost, right, which we're bad, but it's because we're basically kind of like introducing unnecessary risk into basic software. And I think that as we do that more and more, and we're also where we're going with agentic systems, basically we're going into a world where it's going to be very difficult to like identify all the interdependencies, control the control the kind of like software and what it does, and that to me is like one of the in my practice, to me, that this is like one of the scariest ones.
It's going to be really bad when all the cyber agents figure out how to go attack all the poorly written code and software systems.
100%.
OK, thanks for that. I think I wanted to start us off on a note like that. Let's circle back to the whole name of this panel, which is AI assurance. I don't know what that means. People are talking about AI safety. They're talking about responsible AI. They're talking about governance. What do you think of as AI assurance meaning? Or if you refer to it as something else, what should we be calling it? And Chloé, I'm going to start with you.
So I dispute the term AI assurance. I also am not entirely sure what it's meant to mean. I think that's fine, though. No one really understood what responsible AI was supposed to mean either. In a way, it's helpful, right? Because as our understanding grows about what's needed, the term should be able to expand to fit. But I don't like the term assurance because it suggests some level of confidence that I don't think that we can give, right? It suggests that we can assure you about the safety of your models or the fairness of your models, the security, and that they're not going to have these negative impacts on the world. And the truth is, there is no risk option when it comes to AI. Right? We can't promise an absolute perfectly safe model. That's just not in the cards. We cannot and have never been able to promise an absolutely unbiased or fair model. And so I think that language sets us up to some extent for failure if we're thinking that there's some magic answer to the problem. These aren't problems that can be solved. Right? right? So we can't promise someone an answer. I think, as I've been trying to think about what would be a good alternative term, AI best efforts isn't quite as sexy, or probably people aren't going to write books on that, but it's probably more what we're in line for. Similar to the AI responsibility work, it was never to solve these problems. It should never have been thought about that way. It should have been thought about making thoughtful, deliberate, researched, continuous work in order to create safer, fairer AI.
Why is that different from, I mean, in software and in manufacturing, we have quality assurance, which I think no one expects software systems to be completely bug-free, but we still call it quality assurance. What's different about this? And
I think part of it is just how new the AI is. So saying we can assure, like, quality assurance is one component of any tool or system, or people understand that doesn't mean we're going to 100% be able to ensure the quality, but it does create an expectation that, say, an iPhone has gone through quality assurance and then it starts blowing up, right, in people's pockets, that Apple is now responsible for having to deal with that because they've made you some assurances about the absolute safety of that system.
Yeah, maybe the problem is it's not clear what's being assured.
Yeah, I think that's right. AI is too big of a term
right.
for us to offer any kind of meaningful assurance.
No, I think that if you think of like kind of other technologies, maybe that's kind of like, we can try to find other, analogies, and, you can think of like cloud, right? Cloud computing is a technology, right? And, with cloud computing, like, we can think of, security, for example, but nobody really talks about safety, right, of cloud computing, right? Even though there's, potentially a lot of private data, a lot of private information, and, maybe there are, going to be like bad words inside some cloud server. But so I think we do have to ask ourselves, like, kind of what is it, about this technology, right, that makes us think about, things like ethics and safety, right, and kind of like the other things that are, that I think are unique to this technology. And I think that it's the fact that it, obviously kind of like it's ubiquitous, right, but also has like a lot of implications, around, I think, around society that are relevant to like a lot of people, right? The Economist, doesn't publish like didn't publish every week, an article about, or articles about cloud computing, or or Web 2.0 or what have you, right? And it's not only because these technologies were different or less impressive or more impressive. I think it's just about the its implications to society, which I think with AI there are I think that there are a lot of them, right?
Yeah, I think this. So there's kind of like two questions there, right? One is about like why is it such a struggle to kind of like find this one encompassing word for AI, and specifically like generative AI today. And I completely agree with Yaron on that the implications of like what this technology can have are are vastly different. But I think it's a little bit more than that. Where if you look at traditional software, or if you look at like manufacturing, for example, you still have one person that's in charge of like programming it or creating that technology in a way that's very explainable and very interpretable, right? So think about software. You're writing like for loops. You're checking conditions to say like, okay, if this, then that, etc. Whereas like anytime you're programming with generative AI specifically, you're really in this domain where there's this like massive black box model, and you have to kind of like somehow build an intuition for how you write English when you're talking to this model to maybe like 70% of the times like get it to do what you need it to do, right? And I'd actually encourage you all to try it. Like maybe ask the exact same question to a foundation model today, and then just try it like 10 times, and you'll see that you'll end up with like different responses across those 10 times, right? And software also has failure points. It's not that software is always like 100% like consistent, but it's not to this level of like unreliability that we're kind of like talking about, and that is fundamentally new about Gen AI today.
Just to be clear, that the getting 10 different answers to the same question is not a lack of reliability so much, right?
I think, yeah, I'm actually really glad you brought that up, because it leads into what I was going to say next about assurance, where when you think about assurance or reliability, I think a very, very, very important distinction to make is what AI means for you and whether AI is simply the model or whether AI is the system around which that model is built, right? And if you are a foundation model company as OpenAI and Meta are, getting different responses to the same question might not be a bad thing, right? But there's maybe like 6 to maybe at most like 10 companies today in the world that are building foundation models, and most of AI, adoption, or most of like how most of us will end up interacting with these AI systems over the next 5-10 years will actually be through like applications and services that are powered by these foundation models. Your automated like sales agent that you're talking to, for example, more so than the model directly, right? And when you're talking on that system level context rather than just that model context, assurance or reliability mean very different things. If you, for example, have an AI programmer that's writing code for you, this idea of like, if you give it an instruction to do, to like write a program, you want like a very consistent, reliable output. And that's also the context in which I think of assurance, right? Where it's very hard to have any guarantees, as Chloe said, on like what the model can do. But if you really want to see, or if the world is going to have, if the world is going to see Gen AI have this impact, then having like some level of guarantees, or at least being able to define like what you want guarantees around for that system level component rather than just that model component ends up becoming essential.
So, go ahead, and then I want to build on what Shreya just said.
One thing that, one quick exercise. Imagine for a moment that you are building a company that works on AI agents. And you're going to deploy these AI agents. And what they do is they can control people's computers. That means they can use people's web browsers. They can read and write email. They can use a terminal, right? They can write and execute code. OK. Right now, your level of nervousness should be pretty high, obviously. But then what does assurance mean in that world, right? And I think it's hard to say I'm gonna make any assurance statements about AI, but maybe I can assure you that I have a good process, right? And that process can contain things like iterative deployment on the one hand, right? Like can I deploy gradually, maybe in like sandboxes. The second one is monitoring, right? We better monitor the hell out of this thing and learn by doing. And by the way, maybe to plant a topic for later, maybe it's like, what assurances can I provide ex ante, like before I do anything, before I deploy, versus what are the things that I can only observe once I deploy, right? And then the third one is a topic that our colleagues at Anthropic are thinking about a lot, and I give credit to Jeff Irving on this, is like to bring safety cases, which are used in other industries, right? Like the safety case for a nuclear plant is thousands of pages long, right? I think we have to come up with something a bit more manageable here. But like, it's not like, oh, I run some evals and here's some thresholds and I can guarantee anything. It's like, no, I have a proper process in place, and for these reasons, I can make a case that this thing is going to be safe. And one thing that's really important, and I think that builds on what you two were saying, is you deploy these agents in the wild, right? And you think now about prompt injections, for example, right? How are we going to catch or imagine all of the ways in which this can happen? Sorry, you were going to say something.
No, I'm with you through up until the sentence where you say that once I have a good process, I can assure you that it's going to be safe. And I don't think that you meant that.
No, I didn't mean that.
Right, yeah.
Well, let me maybe guide the conversation from, I think we've been like in the descriptive realm, and let me try to move it to like the prescriptive realm. I think, let me first posit, like, even if it is impossible to assure the complete, perfect quality or safety of some system, there is going to be value in some set of techniques and mechanisms and a discipline around how can we have increasing confidence that an AI system is going to behave as we expect it to behave, or as we want it to behave. And then, let me also underscore Shreya's point that while we've got a non-representative sample on the stage here, because we've got Meta and we've got OpenAI, there are a small number of companies building these foundation models, and we call those the builders of AI. The vast majority of companies will be users of AI. They will take those foundation models and build AI systems around them. What would be your advice for those users, those consumers of AI, who are going to not just ask ChatGPT to make up a bedtime story for their kids, but build an AI system that's going to be important for their business. What advice would you give them for how to manage the safety and quality and expected behavior of these systems they're creating?
So, yeah, I mean, I can take that. I love that question because that's kind of like, the bread and butter of what I do and like what I think about all of the time. I think like one of the things that maybe is interesting to me, because like maybe a lot of people don't think about it, is when you're thinking about like what is the protocol that you should follow, right? Or what should your process be in order to like deploy a system that's built using AI? One of the first things that you really need to think about is like what are the ways that this can go wrong, again, and it's very different from software, right? So I really encourage thinking about it in this idea of like a risk taxonomy. So for any agent that you're building, for example, for a software agent, the risk taxonomy of like what is the possible harm that this AI agent can have is very, very different from, for example, like a RAG chatbot, right? And the risk taxonomy that a RAG chatbot can have. And this can be a challenging thing to do, but there's actually like a bunch of really awesome resources. So for example, like the National Institute of Standards and I'm actually blanking on what the T is for.
Technology.
National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, has a GenAI profile of their AI risk framework, which basically lists out a taxonomy of AI risk, which is a great starting point. I think there's a bunch of other great work by folks at MIT, et cetera, that publish risk taxonomies, as well as just kind of like going out into spaces where people talk about like specific applications and then looking at what risk to even consider. Once you have that, what you can start doing is then translating all of those risks into explicit kind of like tests that you do, right? Both at development time to see how likely is it that your risks are actualizing, and then to Joaquin's point, like post-deployment monitoring, where once you deploy that system, you're constantly monitoring how likely is it that those risks kind of actualize, right? And once again, this is different from traditional software, because at traditional software, you're really thinking of performance more so than risk. But in the new Gen AI paradigm, it becomes important to like change that perspective a little bit.
Can I follow up on that? Because I love part of what I got from what you were saying there is like you don't need to go at it alone, and that would be part of my advice too. There are incredible resources out there, and one thing that I know Meta does, and also a lot of the other AI builders, is we've been investing in these spaces for a very long time. We've created lots of resources on how to think about AI safety and Gen AI safety, how to think about the various things that we might want assurance about, and making those tools available to the public, right? And creating forums where people can talk about how their best practices have developed. And don't feel like you have to start from scratch. There's a lot of stuff out there, including lots of stuff that I know we put out there. But my second piece of advice would be to try and get as crisp and clear as you can in your own minds about what your values as a company are, what principles you want to uphold. I know a lot of companies start with a list of principles, and they may or may not be particularly meaningful. I think in this world of AI, where the risks are considerable, and we'll have to keep making really hard trade-offs because there is no one safe or perfect or ideal system, you need to know and you need to be willing to reflect on what it is that you're willing to trade off, right? What are the important values for you? And think about them not just at the beginning, think about them often, right? Because as the technology changes, as information changes, as your technology changes, you're going to want to revisit those conversations. So take it seriously would be my second piece of advice.
Yeah, I think kind of like adding to what's being said here, if we're thinking about this like very pragmatically, if you're now like a CISO of of a Fortune 100, Fortune 500 company, then this is not a theoretical exercise. This is something that's very practical and pragmatic, and then and something that you just need to do. So fortunately, there are pretty good resources right now on what it means to secure AI in the organization, and kind of as kind of like what was kind of like to what was said, part of it is like identifying your use cases and applications. So there are kind of like good frameworks. On the generally speaking, on the security side, right? What that means is it means You need to have visibility. You need to know where your applications are. Once you know where your applications are, kind of to what was being said here, you basically need to do validation of your applications. So you need to you identify where what are your where your applications are, what they are. Now you need to validate them, and you need to sort of like test them for various vulnerabilities and what have you. And then for applications that are going into production, you need to protect them using something like guardrails, right? Or mechanisms like that. So those are kind of like at a very, very high level. Those are the things that people will be looking at when they're thinking about the security aspect of AI.
I would only add one thing: communicate. Communicate before you deploy. Communicate during. State your principles. State your playbooks. If you're going to be borrowing something from the AI Safety Institutes, for example, I was at a convening yesterday where things are coming together. Be transparent about what playbooks you're intending to use, and then please ask your customers to have zero hesitation to reach out to you if they see anything strange.
I'll share, you guys tell me if this resonates with you, if you think this is good practice or overly conservative. For most of the customers we work with, I would say we're seeing folks progress very well towards using Gen AI systems for internal use cases, like internal Q&A, knowledge discovery, and for things that are ultimately going to be externally facing as long as there's a human in the loop. But among the enterprise customers we work with, there's very little production straight to an external user or customer. I think out of concerns that these systems are still too hard to scrutinize and guardrail. I'm curious for sort of your gut check, like sensible or overly cautious?
No, I mean, I think it's, so first of all, I think it's very both. It's both sensible and very cautious, and I'll explain why. First of all, I think when you ask in surveys when leaders in enterprises are being asked about what is their biggest blocker for AI adoption or adopting AI in production, it is exactly that. I think it's over 70% of them, their biggest blocker is security and privacy. Now, is it sensible? 100% it's sensible, because when for anybody who's worked with AI, with generative AI, in particular, should be well aware of all the privacy risks and all the security risks. Just as an example, one of the things that our team recently discovered, the team that used to be Robust Intelligence, now it's like Cisco AI, discovered that basically you can extract complete New York Times articles and Wall Street Journal articles from large language models, from ChatGPT or Claude or what have you. So it basically means that these models they actually retain in memory, and kind of in memory almost, kind of the training data that we're trained on, and then people can just extract them. So very sensible to be worried about those things. Is it overcautious? It's overcautious if you're trying to do that alone. I think there are a lot of great solutions out there that can basically protect organizations and sort of go, have them go from never deploying AI or to basically having them deploy applications in within a week, right? Because I think that what we all realize is that the technology is really, really great. So as long as we know how to protect it, we can launch applications with confidence.
Paranoid or wise? Anybody else have a take? It's okay if not.
Yeah, I can speak to that. I would argue that it's actually wise. And think about, so this is definitely the case for most enterprises that even are using us. So they are adding guardrails around their AI applications, but even so, they are pretty hesitant to make those applications really customer facing. And if you put themselves in their shoes, it's very unclear what your protocol should be to put something like that in a very high risk scenario, right? So I used to work in self-driving, and so the analogy I always like using is you have, whenever you give someone a driver's license, you have a driving test for a person, right? For self-driving cars, the question I used to think about a lot is, what is this equivalent of a driver's test for a self-driving car, right? And it's the exact same question for generative AI applications specifically today, where if you're a bank and you're building building a Gen AI application to maybe take the load off your customer support agents, what is the minimum viable protocol you need to follow so that when, not if, but when that AI behaves in an unexpected manner, you as an organization have done your duty of care, right? You've done your due diligence and you're not liable for whatever that AI model generates. This is also where I kind of disagree with my other entrepreneurship community in Silicon Valley, which is very famously anti-regulation. And believe me, it's not because I want to accelerate this technology. I'm very passionate about this technology, but at the same time, the lack of regulation, or even not regulation, but like guidance around what it takes to deploy this a generative AI system in a high-risk scenario means that a lot of enterprises and organizations today are kind of flying blind. And so having some sort of like federal level guidance, et cetera, would make it easier for like all of you to see a lot more Gen AI first applications maybe in your the next time you're interacting with the customer support agent at your bank, for example.
All right, as a final prompt for the group here, and sorry for not giving you more heads up to think about this, I'd love to hear from everybody a prediction about something that's going to happen in the next 12 months related to AI safety, AI assurance, sort of the development of this space. Feel free to start in whatever order you want.
I feel I shouldn't answer that because we have an active, threat intelligence team and a research team that actively does these kinds of things. So I'm gonna.
Oh.
I think Joaquin sort of hinted at it. I think we're not going to be talking as much about just the models. We're going to be talking about agents in a year from now, and agents are AIs that can, at the very least, engage in multi-stage reasoning and planning, and can interact with tools, meaning that they can interact with the worlds, the real worlds, not just through you, but as their own entities. And I think those are coming faster than maybe people realize. And we're going to have lots of AI assurance questions for them.
Joaquin?
I'm gonna try and dream a little bit. So I dream that before the end of 2025, we're going to see a very robust international network of I'm going to say AI safety institutes, just because there's a few of those in the world. They're not the only organizations that do this, obviously, that governments will rely on for testing in whatever regulation different countries have. And let me amp up the dream a bit more. I dream that there will be harmonization, so that if I'm based in the US, I don't have to interface with 27 different organizations, but there'll be one, right? And then behind the scenes, they all coordinate. I dream that they will specialize. Some of them will be deeply specialized in cultural issues, multilinguality and things like that. Others will specialize maybe in robotic applications and be like the best in the world. Others will specialize in bio threats and whatnot. So I also dream that there will be like international cooperation in maybe databases and registers of threats, so that when people find incidents, there's like incident databases, and we all share them and we all sort of improve.
Love it. It's beautiful. Thank you for bringing us back to optimism. You 30 seconds.
I have 30 seconds. I have like 2 notes on that. One is bleak, one isn't. I'll start with the bleak one first. So as we get like more powerful multimodal models, I think like one of the maybe riskier things we're going to start to see within the next 12 months is very, very convincing AI deepfakes that just kind of like propagate our news media or our like social networks, and then we just are subject to more misinformation. So getting more like AI literacy specifically, just as a population level skill, I think is going to start becoming more important. The more optimistic one, I want to kind of like echo what Chloé said. I think like systems built on top of AI, I'm like a huge proponent of them. That will be the AI that you interact with most. We're going to start seeing some really reliable and very robust kind of executions of those become much more common, which just says the fact that we get to live in this time where this level of like intelligence is happening, and it is so much so that it's just becoming the norm for us. I think like seeing that actualize will just be like mind-blowing. Yeah.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.